The morning alarm echoed through Mining Camp 47 like it had every day for the past 10 years. Jake Morrison rolled off his thin mattress and pulled on his worn work clothes. Around him, 200 other humans did the same thing. Nobody spoke, much in the mornings. There was nothing good to say about another day of digging rocks for their alien masters. Jake was 35 years old and had been fighting the Caltharians since he was 20. Not fighting with guns or ships because humans did not have those anymore. Fighting with small acts of rebellion that nobody noticed. Stealing food, hiding messages, helping people escape when they could. His sister Lisa was already awake, braiding her long brown hair. She used to be a teacher back on Earth before the aliens came. Now she worked in the Mine Communications Center, which meant she could sometimes get news from other camps. The news was never good. "Any word from Sector 9?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa shook her head. "Nothing for 3 days. Could be equipment problems or—" She did not need to finish. They both knew what else it could be. The Caltharians had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. They were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and no mercy. Their ships were bigger than cities. Their weapons could destroy planets. Most importantly, they ruled through fear. If anyone rebelled, the Caltharians did not just punish the rebel. They killed 10 random people from the same species. It did not matter if those people were innocent. It did not matter if they were children. The message was clear. Cause trouble, and your own people will die for it. This system had worked for centuries. Every species in the galaxy lived in terror of the Shadow Guard, the Caltharian police force that enforced the Empire's will. The Shadow Guard wore black armor and carried weapons that could cut through steel. They appeared without warning and left behind only fear. Humans were the newest addition to the Caltharian Empire. Earth had been discovered 50 years ago and conquered in a single day. The human military had tried to fight back, but human weapons were like throwing rocks at a mountain. Now Earth was a mining colony, and most humans lived in camps scattered across the galaxy. The Caltharians considered humans to be weak and stupid. Good for digging in dangerous mines where other species might get hurt, but not much else. They gave humans the worst jobs, the least food, and the harshest punishments. In the galactic hierarchy, humans were at the very bottom. Jake finished getting dressed and walked outside. The camp was built in a crater on an asteroid that had no name, only a number. The sky was always black here, filled with distant stars that reminded him of Earth. The air came from machines and tasted like metal. He found Pete Collins sitting by the main gate, drinking something that passed for coffee. Pete was 60 years, old and had gray hair and hands like leather. He had worked in mines his whole life, first on Earth and now here. Pete was the unofficial leader of the camp workers, and the Caltharians tolerated him because he kept the humans working. "Morning, Jake," Pete said. "Got a shipment coming in today. New workers from the processing center on Titan." Jake nodded. New workers usually meant that other workers had died. Mining trilithium crystals was dangerous work. The crystals powered all Caltharian technology, from their ships to their weapons. Without trilithium, the Empire would collapse. That was why humans did the mining. If they died from radiation or cave-ins, the Caltharians could always get more. "How many?" Jake asked. 50, including some families. Families were rare in the camps. The Caltharians usually separated parents from children, claiming it made people work harder. When families stayed together, it was either because someone had bribed a guard or because the situation was desperate. A shadow passed overhead. Jake looked up to see a Caltharian transport ship landing on the camp's single runway. The ship was sleek and black, like everything the Caltharians built. It touched down without making a sound. The main gate opened and Lieutenant Commander Vexitar walked through. He was the Shadow Guard officer in charge of this sector. Vexitar was taller than most Caltharians, with scars on his gray face and cold, yellow eyes. His black armor was polished to perfection, and his weapon was always ready. Behind Vexitar came 20 human prisoners. They walked in a line with their hands bound behind their backs. Jake recognized some faces from other camps. They all looked tired and scared. "New workers," Vextar announced in his deep voice. He spoke English because all humans were required to learn it, but his accent made the words sound harsh. "They will follow camp rules. They will work hard. They will cause no trouble." Pete stood up slowly. "Yes, sir. We'll get them settled." Vexitar's yellow eyes swept across the camp. He seemed to be looking for something wrong, some excuse to make an example of someone. This was how the Shadow Guard worked. They did not just enforce laws, they created fear. "Production has been down 3% this month," Vextar said. "This is unacceptable. Workers will increase output or face consequences." Jake felt his hands tighten into fists, but he kept his face blank. 3% was nothing. Equipment broke down. People got sick. Accidents happened. But the Caltharians expected perfection from their slaves. "We'll do better," Pete said calmly. Vexitar stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked back to his ship. The transport lifted off and disappeared into the black sky. The new prisoners were freed from their bonds and led into the camp. Jake watched them closely. Most looked broken the way people did after months or years in Caltharian custody, but a few still had fire in their eyes. One of them was a young woman with short red hair and dirt on her face. She looked around the camp with interest instead of despair. When her eyes met Jake's, she gave him a small nod. Another was an older man carrying a small bag. He moved carefully, like someone protecting something precious. Behind him walked a little girl with black hair and bright eyes. Jake had seen thousands of prisoners arrive over the years. Most were broken people who just wanted to survive. But sometimes, rarely, there were people who still believed they could fight back. As the new workers were assigned to barracks and work teams, Jake made his decision. Tonight, after the guards changed shifts, he would talk to some of them, carefully, quietly. The Caltharians thought they had crushed the human spirit. They thought fear was enough to keep their empire strong forever. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Dr. Ben Chen had been hiding medicine for 3 months. It started small, just a few pills here and there from his medical supplies. When children in the camp got sick, he gave them what they needed. The Caltharians only provided basic medical care to keep workers alive. If someone was too sick to work, they were left to die. Ben could not watch children suffer when he had medicine that could help them, so he took extra supplies during his weekly trips to the main medical depot. A bottle of antibiotics here, some pain medicine there, nothing that would be missed right away. His daughter Amy helped him sometimes. She was 8 years old with bright black eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of the mining camp. Amy did not understand why the aliens were so cruel, but she understood that some children were sick and needed help. "Daddy, is Katie going to be okay?" Amy asked one evening. Katie was a 6-year-old girl who lived in their barracks section. She had been coughing for days. "She will be fine," Ben said, pulling a small bottle from his hidden stash. "This medicine will make her feel better." Amy nodded seriously. She always helped deliver the medicine to sick children. The other kids trusted her, and she was small enough to move around the camp without attracting attention from the guards. Ben knew he was taking a huge risk. If the Caltharians discovered what he was doing, they would not just punish him. They would execute 10 random humans as an example. But every time he saw a sick child, he thought of Amy. He could not stand by and do nothing. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in the 3rd week of September. Lieutenant Commander Vexistar arrived for one of his surprise inspections. These happened every few weeks, always without warning. The Shadow Guard would search barracks, check work areas, and look for any sign of rebellion. Ben was in the medical station when the alarm sounded. 3 short blasts meant inspection. All workers had to return to their assigned areas immediately. Amy was playing with other children near the camp entrance when she heard the alarm. She ran toward their barracks, but stopped when she saw Katie crying by the food hall. The little girl was having trouble breathing again. "Amy, come on," called Lisa Morrison, who was herding children toward safety. But Amy looked at Katie and made a decision that would change everything. She ran to their hiding place behind the water recyclers where Ben kept emergency medicine. She grabbed a small, bottle of the cough medicine that had helped Katie before. By the time Amy reached Katie, the Shadow Guard were already searching the barracks. Amy quickly gave Katie the medicine and told her to hide the bottle. "This will help you breathe better," Amy whispered. "But do not let the scary aliens see it." Katie nodded and put the bottle in her pocket. Vextar moved through the camp like a hunting animal. His yellow eyes missed nothing. He checked work schedules, examined equipment, and questioned workers at random. The inspection was going normally, until one of his soldiers found something in the children's area. "Commander," the soldier called. "We found contraband." Vextar walked over to where the soldier was holding Katie. The little girl was shaking with fear, and the bottle of medicine was in the soldier's hand. "Where did you get this?" Vexatar demanded. Katie was too scared to speak. She just pointed toward Amy, who was standing with the other children. Amy stepped forward. She was frightened, but she had been raised to tell the truth. "It is mine," she said in a small but clear voice. "Yours?" Vexatar looked down at the child. "Where did you get medicine?" "I found it. Katie was sick, so I gave it to her. I just wanted to help." Ben pushed through the crowd of adults. "She does not know what she is saying. She is just a child. I am the doctor here. The medicine is my responsibility." But Vextar was not interested in Ben's confession. He had found something more valuable than a doctor stealing supplies. He had found a child admitting to rebellion. Under Caltharian law, any act of taking or distributing unauthorized items was considered theft and rebellion. It did not matter that Amy was 8 years old. It did not matter that she was trying to help a sick friend. The law was the law. "This child has confessed to theft and distribution of controlled medical supplies," Vextar announced to the gathered crowd. "Under Imperial Code 447, the penalty is death." The camp went silent. Even the Caltharian soldiers looked uncomfortable. Ben fell to his knees. "Please," he begged. "She is just a child. Take me instead. I am the one who stole the medicine. She was just helping because I asked her to." "The child confessed," Vextar said coldly. "The law is clear." Lisa Morrison stepped forward. "She does not understand what she is saying. She is 8 years old. Children do not understand adult laws." Other adults began speaking up. Pete Collins, Jake Morrison, even some of the newer arrivals who barely knew Amy. They all begged for her life. They offered to take her place, to accept extra punishment, to work harder. But Vexatar had made his decision. In his mind, this was perfect. Executing a child would send a message that no one was safe from imperial justice. It would crush any thoughts of rebellion in this camp and others. Amy did not fully understand what was happening. She knew the adults were upset and the alien commander was angry. She knew she was in trouble for taking the medicine. But she did not regret helping Katie. "I am sorry I took the medicine without asking," she said to Vextar. But Katie needed it. She could not breathe. Some of the Caltharian soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Even they could see that this was just a child trying to help another child. But Vextar had served the Empire his entire life. He believed that mercy was weakness and that fear kept order. A public execution would remind everyone of the price of disobedience. The execution was scheduled for the next morning. Amy spent her last night in her father's arms while Ben wept, quietly. She did not understand why everyone was so sad. "Daddy, will Katie be okay?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Katie will be fine." "Good. That is what matters most." When morning came, the entire camp was forced to watch. Amy walked to the execution area holding her father's hand. She was scared but tried to be brave like the heroes in the stories Ben used to tell her. At the last moment, she looked up at Vextar. "Will you make sure Katie gets her medicine if she gets sick again?" Vextar did not answer. He carried out the execution quickly and efficiently, as Imperial protocol demanded. Amy Chen died trying to help a friend breathe easier. Her body was left on display for 3 days as required by Caltharian law, but something happened that Vextar did not expect. The story of Amy's death spread beyond the camp. It traveled through secret communication networks to other camps, other worlds, other species. A human child had died for the crime of compassion. She had given medicine to a sick friend and paid with her life. Across the galaxy, beings who had never met a human began to weep for a little girl they would never know. And in that grief, something new was born, something the Empire had never faced before, something that would bring them down. The news of Amy Chen's death traveled fast through the hidden networks that connected the galaxy's oppressed peoples. Within hours, mining camps across 17 sectors had heard the story. Within days, it reached the homeworlds of species that had never seen a human child. Jake Morrison sat in the communications bunker 3 days after Amy's execution. His hands shook as he read message after message coming through the secret channels. Reports from camps he had never heard of. Messages from alien species he thought were extinct, all talking about one 8-year-old girl. "This cannot be real," he whispered to Lisa. His sister looked up from her own screen. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was something else there now, something hard and angry. "It is real," she said. "Look at this one from the Zathari homeworld." Jake read the message. The Zathari were known for keeping their emotions hidden. They had not shown feelings in public for over a century, but now their planetary council had declared 3 days of mourning for a human child they had never met. "And this one," Lisa continued, pulling up another message. "From the Kryn Military Academy. The Kryn were warriors who had served the Caltharian Empire faithfully for 200 years. They followed orders without question and never showed mercy to enemies. But the message was from a group of young Kryn officers asking how they could help the human resistance. More messages kept coming. From the mining worlds of Sector 12, where Draknari workers had stopped production for a full day of silence. From the agricultural colonies of the Rim, where Villani farmers were asking their human workers what they needed to fight back. Jake had been running a small resistance cell for 15 years. They had maybe 50 active members across 3 mining camps. Their biggest victory had been stealing enough food to feed 20 families for a week. Now beings from across the galaxy were offering to help them fight the most powerful empire in known space. "We are not ready for this," Jake said. "Nobody is ever ready," said a new voice behind them. Jake spun around to see Dr. Elena Rodriguez standing in the doorway. She was a human xenobiologist who worked on research stations near the Caltharian homeworld. Jake had heard of her but never expected to see her in person. "How did you get here?" Lisa asked. "Friends in high places," Elena said with a tired smile. "Or should I say friends in hidden places. There are more of us than you think." Elena sat down and activated a secure communication device Jake had never seen before. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of blinking lights. "Each light is a resistance cell," Elena explained. "Most of them formed in the last 3 days. All because of what happened to Amy." Jake stared at the screen. "There are so many." "The Empire made a mistake," Elena said. "They thought killing a child would scare everyone into submission. Instead, they showed the galaxy something it had forgotten." "What?" "That some things are worth dying for." Elena pulled up detailed files on Imperial supply lines, fleet movements, and resource distribution. Information that should have been impossible for rebels to obtain. "I have been working inside Imperial research facilities for 8 years," she said. "Learning their weaknesses, copying their data, waiting for the right moment. I never thought that moment would come because of an 8-year-old girl giving medicine to her friend." She pointed to specific locations on the map. "Trilithium crystal mines. The Empire has exactly 3 sources for the crystals that power everything they have. Ships, weapons, communications, life support systems, everything." Jake studied the locations. 2 of them use mostly human workers. Exactly. Humans are not just another oppressed species. We are a critical part of their infrastructure. If human workers stop mining trilithium, the Empire starts dying within weeks. Lisa leaned forward. "But the collective punishment law. If we rebel, they kill 10 innocents for every rebel." Elena's face grew dark. "They just executed an 8-year-old girl for giving cough medicine to her friend. Do you really think they will kill fewer people if we do nothing?" Before Jake could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the camp. Emergency lights flashed red, and automated voices announced a security breach. "Shadow Guard incoming." Pete Collins's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel to emergency positions." But when Jake looked at the security monitors, he saw something impossible. 3 Caltharian transport ships were landing at the camp, but they were not attacking. Instead, Caltharian soldiers were getting out with their hands visible and their weapons lowered. "What is happening?" Lisa asked. Elena smiled. "The awakening is not just happening among the oppressed species." Lieutenant Commander Vextar walked into the communications bunker 20 minutes later. But he was not wearing his black Shadow Guard armor. Instead, he wore the simple gray uniform of a regular Imperial officer. Jake reached for his hidden weapon, but Elena held up her hand. "He is here to talk," she said. Vextar looked older than Jake remembered. The yellow glow in his eyes seemed dimmer, and his shoulders were not as straight. "I executed the child," Vextar said without introduction. "I followed Imperial law exactly as written. I did my duty." "Yes, you did," Jake said coldly. "I have served the Empire for 37 years, Vextar continued. "I have carried out thousands of executions, criminals, rebels, enemies of the state. I never questioned my orders." He paused and looked around the room. "But I cannot stop thinking about her last words. She asked me to make sure her friend got medicine if she became sick again. Even knowing she was about to die, she was worried about another child." Lisa stood up. "What do you want from us?" "I want to know how to stop this madness," Vextar said. "My own soldiers are refusing orders. Half the Shadow Guard in this sector has requested transfers. The other half is asking questions I cannot answer." "Questions like what?" Jake asked. "Like why we are executing children for acts of kindness. Like whether the Empire we serve is worth preserving. Like whether there might be a better way." Elena activated her communication device again. The map appeared, now showing even more blinking lights than before. "This is happening across the galaxy," she told Vextar. "Your people are not the only ones questioning orders. We are getting reports of Imperial officers releasing prisoners, Shadow Guard units refusing to fire on civilians, even some Imperial governors asking for negotiations instead of more violence." Vextar studied the map. "How many?" "More every hour. Amy's death did not just wake up the oppressed, it woke up anyone with a conscience." Jake looked at his sister, then at Elena, then at the former Shadow Guard commander who had killed a child and now wanted to help stop the Empire he had served his entire life. "What exactly are you proposing?" Jake asked. Elena's smile was sharp, as a blade. "We are proposing to end 300 years of rule by fear. We are proposing to show the galaxy that there is something stronger than terror, which is hope, and the willingness of good people to fight for it." Jake thought about Amy's small body lying in the camp courtyard for 3 days. He thought about all the other children who had died under Imperial rule. He thought about the thousands of lights on Elena's map, representing beings across the galaxy who were ready to fight. "Tell us what you need," he said. Outside, more ships were landing. Not just human vessels, but Zithari cruisers, Kryn fighters, and ships from species Jake could not even identify, all coming to join a rebellion that had started with one child's act of compassion. The Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. But fear was about to meet something it had never faced before: love, and the terrible, beautiful fury of those who fight to protect the innocent. 3 months after Amy Chen's death, the galaxy was on fire with rebellion. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a captured Caltharian supply ship, watching coordinates flash across the screen. Each number represented another world where the Empire was losing control. The rebellion had grown far beyond what anyone expected. What started as grief over one child's death had become a movement that stretched across 17 sectors. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together against their common oppressor. Production reports from the Trilithium mines, Lisa Morrison announced, reading from her communication station. "Kepler facility is down 60%. Aurora station is at 40%. Titan complex has stopped completely." Jake nodded grimly. The plan Elena Rodriguez had suggested was working better than they hoped. Human workers at the crystal mines had begun organized slowdowns and sabotage. Some pretended to be sick. Others broke equipment accidentally. A few brave ones had simply walked away from their posts. Without trilithium crystals, the Caltharian war machine was starving. Their ships moved slower. Their weapons had less power. Most importantly, their communication networks were failing across the outer sectors. What about the other species? Jake asked. The Zathari have cut off all food shipments to Imperial worlds, Lisa reported. The Kryn are refusing to serve in Shadow Guard units. Even the Villani have stopped cooperating with Imperial tax collectors. Commander Alex Parker entered the bridge carrying a stack of data tablets. He had been an officer in Earth's defense forces before the invasion. Now he was one of the rebellion's top military strategists. Intelligence reports from our people inside the Empire, Alex said, setting down the tablets. The Imperial High Command is in complete panic mode. Jake picked up one of the tablets and read the summary. Shadow Guard units were deserting in record numbers. Imperial governors on 12 worlds had requested emergency reinforcements. Most shocking of all, 3 sector commanders had openly declared their opposition to continued violence against civilians. They are losing control faster than we thought possible, Alex continued. But that makes them more dangerous. Desperate. Enemies do desperate things. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Lisa's communication station lit up with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Emergency broadcasts, Lisa said, her face pale. The Empire just announced new policies. Any world that harbors rebels will face complete destruction. Any species that refuses Imperial orders will be enslaved entirely. Any individual caught supporting the rebellion will be executed along with their entire family. Jake felt ice in his stomach. They are escalating to total war. It gets worse, Lisa continued reading. Emperor Vexkol himself is taking personal command of the suppression effort. He is bringing the First Fleet out of the core worlds for the first time in 50 years. The First Fleet was legend. 1,000 ships commanded by the Empire's most ruthless officers. They had destroyed entire civilizations that refused to surrender. If the Emperor was bringing them out of the core worlds, it meant he was planning genocide on a galactic scale. Alex activated the ship's main display screen. A tactical map showed the positions of Imperial and Rebel forces across known space. Red indicators marked Imperial fleets. Blue showed Rebel positions. There was a lot more red than blue. We are outnumbered 20-1 in ships, Alex said. 50-1 in trained soldiers. 100-1 in advanced weapons. Then we have already lost, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Elena Rodriguez walking onto the bridge. She had been coordinating intelligence operations from hidden bases near the Imperial capital. Her presence here meant something important was happening. The Empire has advantages in technology and numbers, Elena continued. But they have one critical weakness that we can exploit. Which is? Jake asked. Elena smiled, but it was not a happy expression. They still do not understand what they are fighting. She activated her portable communication device and connected it to the ship's display system. The screen filled with images from across the galaxy. Protests on Caltharian, colony worlds, Imperial soldiers laying down their weapons, entire Shadow Guard units joining the rebellion. Look at this footage from the capital world of Sector 7, Elena said, highlighting one image. Caltharian civilians holding vigils for Amy Chen. They are mourning a human child they never met. Jake stared at the image. Hundreds of gray-skinned aliens holding candles and flowers standing in silence outside an Imperial government building. Or this, Elena continued, showing another image. Shadow Guard officers on 3 different worlds have refused orders to execute civilian hostages. They said they will not become child killers like Vextar. The Empire is eating itself from the inside, Alex realized. Exactly. They built their power on fear and absolute obedience. But Amy's death broke something in their system. It showed their own people that the Empire they serve has no honor, no mercy, no justification for existing. Lisa looked up from her station. We are getting a transmission from Vextar himself. He says it is urgent. The former Shadow Guard commander appeared on the main screen. He looked exhausted and was broadcasting from what appeared to be a damaged ship. The Emperor has issued execution orders for all rebel sympathizers in the Imperial military. Vextar reported. Anyone who has questioned orders, requested transfers, or shown mercy to civilians is to be killed immediately. Jake leaned forward. How many people are we talking about? Conservative estimate? 500,000 Imperial officers and soldiers across the galaxy. The Emperor would rather destroy his own military than risk continued rebellion. Elena whistled softly. He is panicking, making the same mistake they made with Amy, but on a massive scale. What do you mean? Alex asked. He thinks more violence will solve his problems. But every execution order, every threat, every act of brutality just creates more rebels. The Empire is creating its own destruction. Lisa interrupted them. Priority message coming in from Earth. It is from Ben Chen. Amy's father appeared on the screen. He looked older and sadder than when Jake had last seen him, but there was determination in his eyes. I have a message for everyone fighting in my daughter's name, Ben said. Amy believed that helping others was more important than being safe. She died because she could not stand by and watch her friend suffer. He paused and looked directly into the camera. I have been hiding since her death, trying to stay alive, trying to stay safe, but that is not what Amy would want. She would want me to help others no matter the cost. Ben held up a small object that Jake recognized as a medical scanner. I have information about Imperial biological weapons programs. Projects designed to target specific species for extinction. The Emperor is planning to use these weapons if the rebellion continues to spread. Jake felt his blood run cold. Biological weapons that could wipe out entire species. The Empire was preparing for genocide on an unimaginable scale. I am transmitting all the data to rebel command centers across the galaxy, Ben continued. Use this information to save lives. Stop the Empire before they can destroy everything we are fighting for. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Elena was the first to speak. The Emperor has made his choice. Total war, no matter the cost. He would rather rule over ashes than lose power. Then we have made our choice too, Jake said. He activated the ship's communication system and opened channels to rebel forces across the galaxy. This is Jake Morrison to all rebel commanders. The Empire is preparing to use biological weapons against civilian populations. We cannot let this happen. It is time to end this war before they can commit genocide. He paused, thinking of Amy's bright smile and innocent questions about helping others. We fight not for conquest, but for the right of children to give medicine to their friends without being executed. We fight not for power, but for a galaxy where kindness is strength, not weakness. Responses came flooding in from hundreds of rebel commanders, Zathari fleet admirals, Krynwar chiefs, human mining supervisors, Draknari clan leaders, all of them ready to risk everything in one final battle. Amy Chen died trying to help one sick child. Jake continued. Now we fight to help every child in the galaxy. All ships, all forces converge on the Imperial capital. We end this now. The rebellion that started with an 8-year-old girl's compassion was about to become the largest battle in galactic history. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the spirit of a child who just wanted to help her friends smiled and whispered words of encouragement to those who fought in her name. The battle for the Caltharian homeworld began at dawn on a Tuesday, exactly 1 year after Amy Chen's death. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching thousands of rebel ships emerge from hyperspace around the Imperial capital, planet. They were not an impressive fleet by Imperial standards. Most of the ships were converted mining vessels, cargo haulers, and small patrol craft. The humans flew ships held together with spare parts and hope. The Zathari brought sleek science, vessels never designed for war. The Kryn contributed heavy fighters that looked dangerous but were outnumbered 10-1. Against them waited the first fleet of the Caltharian Empire. 1,000 massive warships arranged in perfect formation around their homeworld. Each ship was larger than a city and armed with weapons that could crack planets. The Imperial forces had every advantage except one. They were fighting for an empire that no longer believed in itself. All rebel forces. This is Admiral Morrison, Jake spoke into his communication system. It still felt strange to hear himself called Admiral, but the rebellion needed leaders and he had learned to fight when fighting was required. Today we fight not for conquest, but for the memory of every innocent soul the Empire has destroyed. We fight for Amy Chen and every child who deserves to grow up in a galaxy without fear. Responses came from across the rebel fleet. Human voices, Zithari harmonics, Kryn battle cries, and sounds from species Jake had never heard before, all united in a cause that had started with one little girl trying to help her friend breathe. The first shots came from the Imperial fleet. Massive energy beams that could vaporize entire ships. But the rebel fleet did not fight like a traditional navy. Instead of forming battle lines, they scattered like insects, using their smaller size and desperate courage to get close to the enemy giants. Commander Alex Parker coordinated the human attack groups from his own ship. Remember, we are not trying to destroy their fleet. We just need to get close enough to their command center. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had discovered the Empire's greatest weakness during her years working inside their system. All Imperial technology was controlled from a single command facility on the capital world. If they could capture or destroy that facility, the entire Imperial war machine would shut down. But getting to the planet meant fighting through the First Fleet. The battle was chaos. Rebel ships darted between the massive Imperial vessels like children running between the legs of giants. Many were destroyed by the Empire's superior weapons, but for every rebel ship lost, 3 more seemed to take its place. Jake watched his tactical display and realized something impossible was happening. The Imperial fleet was not fighting at full strength. Many of their ships were holding back, firing warning shots instead of kill shots. Some were not firing at all. "Lisa, get me a communication channel to the Imperial command ship," Jake ordered. His sister worked at her station for several minutes before responding. "Channel open, but I am not sure they will answer." "Imperial Command. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Free Galaxy Alliance. I request immediate communication with your fleet." "Commander." The response came faster than expected. "This is Fleet Admiral Korath of the 1st Imperial Fleet. What do you want, Rebel?" Jake had never spoken directly to a high-ranking Imperial officer before. Fleet Admiral Korath was a legend, said to have never lost a battle in 40 years of service. "I want to know why half your fleet is not fighting," Jake said directly. There was a long pause before Korath answered. "You assume we are fighting at full capacity." "Are you?" Another pause. "Admiral Morrison, I have served the Empire since before your species was discovered. I have destroyed rebel fleets, conquered worlds, and executed countless enemies of the state. I have never questioned my orders." "But," Jake prompted, "but I have also read the reports from the outer sectors. I know what happened to the child named Amy Chen. I know what my Emperor is planning to do with biological weapons. And I know that some orders should not be followed." Jake felt hope rising in his chest. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that this old soldier is tired of killing children. My fleet will defend the homeworld, but we will not participate in genocide. If you can reach the command center and stop the biological weapons program, my ships will not interfere." The communication channel closed, leaving Jake stunned. Even the Empire's most loyal officers were turning against their own government. The rebel fleet pushed through the Imperial defenses toward the planet's surface. Ships crashed and burned in the atmosphere, but others made it through. Jake's own ship touched down in the capital city just as the sun reached its highest point. The Caltharian capital was a city of crystal towers and floating platforms that had stood for 1,000 years. Now it burned with the fires of revolution. Imperial troops fought rebel forces in the streets while civilians watched from windows and doorways. Jake led a strike team toward the central command facility. With him came volunteers from dozens of species, all carrying weapons and determination in equal measure. They fought through Imperial guards and automated defenses, losing friends with every step. The command center was protected by the Empire's elite guard, soldiers who had never known defeat. But they were fighting enemies who had already accepted death as the price of victory. Ben Chen was waiting for them inside the facility. Amy's father had somehow made it to the capital ahead of the main force, carrying the data about the biological weapons program. The Emperor activated the weapons 10 minutes ago, Ben reported, his face grim. Targeting every rebel homeworld simultaneously. We have maybe an hour before the first canisters are released. Jake looked at the massive control system that dominated the center of the room. Thousands of displays showed Imperial operations across the galaxy. With this system, the Empire controlled every ship, every weapon, every communication network in their territory. Can we stop it? Jake asked. Elena Rodriguez was already at the main console, her fingers flying over controls she had studied for years. I can shut down their entire network, but it will take time. Someone needs to hold this room. Outside, they could hear the sounds of approaching Imperial reinforcements. Heavy footsteps and weapons charging. The Empire's last desperate attempt to maintain control. How long do you need? Jake asked. 20 minutes. Jake checked his weapon and looked at his team. There were maybe 30 rebels left from the group that had started with over 100. They were tired, wounded, and outnumbered by at least 10-1. But they were fighting for Amy Chen and every child like her. We hold this room, Jake announced, no matter what. The battle for the command center lasted exactly 19 minutes and 43 seconds. Imperial guards poured through every entrance while the rebels fought with everything they had. Jake lost count of how many enemies fell, how many friends died, how many times death brushed past him. When Elena finally announced, "System shutdown complete," Jake was one of only 5 rebels still standing. Across the galaxy, every Imperial ship went dark. Every weapon system shut down. Every communication network fell silent. The empire that had ruled through fear for 3 centuries died, not with a roar, but with a whisper. Emperor Vexcol took his own life rather than face capture. Most of his inner circle did the same. The biological weapons were destroyed before they could be deployed. The war was over. 6 months later, Jake stood in a park on the rebuilt mining camp 47. In the center of the park was a simple stone monument, with Amy Chen's name and the words she had spoken to comfort frightened children. It is okay to be scared, but do not forget to be kind. Around the monument, children from 17 different species played together. Human children, Zethari young ones, Kryn cubs, and others whose names Jake was still learning. They laughed and ran and shared their toys without caring about species or homeworlds. Ben Chen approached the monument carrying a small bouquet of earth flowers. "She would have loved this," he said quietly. "She made this possible," Jake replied. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to sign the Free Galaxy Charter, a document that established basic rights for all sentient beings. The first right listed was the protection of children. The second was the right to show compassion without fear. Lisa Morrison walked up to join them. She now served as the head of the new Galactic Communication Network, making sure that no world would ever be cut off from help again. The Caltharian Reconstruction Committee wants to build a statue of Amy on their homeworld, she reported. They say she represents the mercy they forgot and want to remember. Jake smiled. The galaxy was still healing from 3 centuries of oppression. There were problems to solve, conflicts to resolve, and a long road ahead. But for the first time, in living memory, children could be kind to each other without fear. Amy Chen had died for giving medicine to a sick friend. Her death had ended an empire and freed a galaxy. She never lived to see the changes her sacrifice would bring, but her legacy would ensure that no child would ever again pay such a price for compassion. The stars themselves seemed brighter now, as if the universe itself was smiling at what its smallest children could accomplish when they chose love over fear. In the end, that was all it took to bring down an empire. One little girl who just wanted to help.